Let's live with mom and the others. You're pregnant, it could be helpful, right? What kind of sleepy talk is this foolish husband of mine? Most daughters-in-law feel the need to be careful just because it's their in-laws, you know? Your family is not just a matter of being careful, do you understand that? While thinking this, I was desperately refusing to live together, but before I knew it, my in-laws had settled into our home. If you really want to live with your family that much, I'll make the house more lively for you. My name is Wendy. Due to an increase in home time a few years ago, I, a 40-year-old, got totally hooked on ordering gourmet food online. It's a good era when you can taste delicious food from popular restaurants without leaving home. Eating food in restaurants with my family would cost a lot, but this way, it's much cheaper. Thanks to this, I enjoy delicious dinners every weekend with my daughter. This is a story from before my daughter was born. I was in my early 20s when I married Daniel. At that time, I was still a youngster, barely beyond a little girl. I went through a serious ordeal. Come on. At least put your dirty socks in the laundry basket in the changing room. Why leave them on the sofa? How many times have I had to say this to my husband? I'm sorry. I'll do it right next time. You always say that, but never do it right. I will next time, for sure. Just like last time, it won't help if you only put one sock in the basket. I'm sorry. My husband laughed, and I laughed along. My husband is quite sloppy. He wasn't so bad when we first got married, but as we lived together for a month, 2 months, it gradually got worse. Probably at first, he was just pretending to be neat. It's cute if it's just about not putting clothes in the laundry basket, but then he would oversleep even when he had work, and whenever I saw his shoes in the entrance, the right shoe was always placed on the left for some reason. When I talked to my friends about this, they laughed and said, "A little sloppiness is nothing, better than being cheated on like me." That's probably true. My husband cares for me and has never shown signs of flirting with other women from the time we dated until today. In that sense, he is a trustworthy husband. So I guess I understand when they say his sloppiness is nothing. Is it too much to ask for my husband to be a good role model for our child during my pregnancy? I was a bit frustrated with his attitude and the opinions around us. Hey, Daniel. It's noon already, wake up. One day, I went to wake him up because he was still asleep past noon on his day off. I'm sorry. Saying that, he yawned hugely, clearly still not having slept enough. You said you'd take me shopping by car today, have you forgotten? Did I say that? Yes. You promised we'd go buy things needed for the baby when it's born. Sorry, can we do it next week? Again. You said the same last week and changed it to today. But it's already noon. Shopping now would mean dealing with busy roads. It's noon because you didn't wake up. You don't need to say it like that, I'm tired too. You managed to oversleep and be late for work twice this week. You sleep more than anyone else at your company. Wendy, you've become cold. You used to be so gentle and soothing, now you're totally a fierce wife. My husband joked like that, and I was a bit annoyed. If my attitude has changed, it's because of him. He has become more careless than before. There's a common saying that you should live together before getting married. Our parents were strongly against premarital cohabitation, saying, living together before marriage just complicates things and you end up not getting married. So, we got married without living together. Now, I sometimes think we should have lived together beforehand. Hindsight is 20/20. Despite some dissatisfaction, I thought we were getting along well. Come on. Use a plate when you eat toast. One morning, unusually, my husband woke up earlier than me, hungry. He toasted some bread for breakfast, it seems. He didn't use a plate, and there were crumbs all over under his seat. If we had pigeons, they'd happily clean up, but unfortunately, we don't have pigeons or a maid. It's up to me to clean. My belly's getting bigger, and vacuuming is getting hard, please help out a bit. Half crying, I said that, and my husband squinted his eyes at me. I couldn't read any emotion from his expression. What's going on? I wondered, and he said, I wasn't told off like that at my parents' house. Wendy, aren't you a bit too meticulous? As if I was being overly sensitive, my husband's way of speaking irked me. He continued without feeling guilty. It was good at my parents' house. No, he truly doesn't mean any harm. He genuinely feels that I am meticulous. But I couldn't agree with his assessment of me at all. I just thought he was too sloppy. By this point, I think we definitely had fundamental differences. But strangely, I didn't think about divorce. Once the baby was born, I believed he would realize his responsibilities as a parent. Men don't get pregnant, so they only truly feel like a parent when the child is born. I believed that once he saw our child, he would become a responsible father, but things started moving in an unexpected direction. Huh? Live with your family? Why all of a sudden? One day, my husband suddenly proposed living with his family. Until today, there had never been such a talk, so I was really surprised. Well, I told my mom you've been mad at me a lot lately, and we thought it might lessen your burden if we lived together. What? I'm worn out, and you're irritated because I can't do anything for you. If my mom and the others are around, they could help you, right? It's not a bad idea. With a face like he had come up with a brilliant idea, my husband looked at me. No, to me, living with them is darkly written as bright. It's an understatement. To be frank, the members of my husband's family are quite challenging. His mother is domineering and dotes on my husband, her eldest son. Even during our marriage, she was almost like my husband's girlfriend, burning with hostility towards me, as if she felt I was stealing her precious son. And then there's his sister Erica, who should be living away but almost always sleeps over at her parents' house. I heard she got married in her teens but divorced at the same age of 20. She technically lives alone near her parents' home, but in reality, she's returned and mostly relies on her parents' money. I only found out about her situation after we got married. I was only told she was living alone before we got married. And then there's my father-in-law with a bad leg. He's not a bad person, but he's somewhat domineering, always giving orders to my mother-in-law. It's easy to imagine that if we lived together, the burden of taking care of my father-in-law would fall on me. To live with them, knowing what they're like after marriage, would be foolish. I used to think my husband was the only sane one, but lately, he's been acting like a top contender in the sloppiness championship. I don't want to take care of even bigger children when we're about to have our own child. However, I can't convey these feelings to my husband directly. Even if I were honest, my husband, who thinks I'm fussy, would only understand a third of my emotions. So, blurring the truth, I said, I can't help but feel a bit uncomfortable, so I'd rather not live together. Then he said, What are you talking about? My parents wouldn't make a pregnant you feel uncomfortable. They'd rather take care of everything for you. I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh at my husband's naive response. Hey, even you, my husband, who's by my side every day, can't be considerate, and you think your parents and sister can pull off such feats? Right now. I'm pregnant, and changing environments wouldn't be good for the baby. No, it's better to live together precisely because you're pregnant. More people around would be helpful, right? He doesn't realize that just increasing the number of people means less space and more food to prepare. And who ends up having to cook all those meals? Feeling disheartened, I thought it was futile to argue. Anyway, I'm not having trouble now, so I'd like to keep things as they are. That's a lie. My belly's grown bigger, and everything I do is a struggle. Shopping is difficult, and some days just sitting on the toilet is a challenge. I do have days when I feel unwell, and truthfully, I often wish I could borrow a cat's paw for help. The thought of going into labor like this does make me anxious, and it would be nice to have someone around. But not just anyone. Rather than live with my in-laws for that reason, I'd be better off returning to my parents' home for a maternity stay. My husband, who couldn't possibly imagine my true feelings, arrogantly said. You don't understand, I'm just worried about the future. Sure, I let it slide. I thought that was the end of that conversation, but it wasn't. My husband continued to bring up living with his family whenever he could. For some reason, his family seemed eager too, with his sister calling our home asking, "When will we start living together? Maybe we should come to your place first to try it out." Surprisingly, even my mother-in-law, who seemed like she would dislike me and my husband living together, was very enthusiastic about moving in. While she never contacted me directly, through my husband she'd say things like, "Looking forward to living together," or "Wendy, she wants to go out just the two of us." Am I being too suspicious, or is she up to something not so good? But I intuitively felt that living together was not the right thing to do. Then one day, I thought my husband had come home from work, but behind him trailed his entire family. What? I was speechless. My husband said, "Let's all have dinner together." What's for dinner today? It's one thing if he suggested dining out, but to expect a pregnant me to cook for all these people without prior notice, seriously? Isn't that a bit too much? Couldn't someone have objected, saying they were all very hungry or want meat dishes? No one offered to help or mentioned it might be a burden on me. Who among them would care for a pregnant woman if we lived together? I can assert that such a future would never come. That day, my father-in-law complained that the stew I made was too healthy and not hearty enough, and my mother-in-law told me to make snacks for him, while my husband just watched. My sister-in-law even made a fuss about wanting ice cream, and despite it being late, tried to send me, a pregnant woman, out to buy it. Luckily, my husband stopped her, but that doesn't make him kind. It's the least he could do. Ultimately, that day, the entire family stayed over, and I had to prepare breakfast for everyone. My husband's decision to invite his family over without thinking didn't become any less severe just because he stopped the ice cream run. "Why did you bring your mother and the others home?" I asked him the night after his family had left. "It was a good experience, right? You seemed to enjoy having my mom around. Don't you think living together wouldn't be so bad?" I was astounded. My husband is blind, or maybe he doesn't have eyes at all. How could he possibly think I looked happy at that time? If I seemed happy, it was just me acting polite because I'm an adult. My outburst left my husband looking bewildered. "Why are you mad?" "I have every right to be upset. I was not having fun at all." "What? You were smiling. So should I stay angry forever then? Unless you show your feelings, I won't understand. I've repeatedly said I don't want to live together, you don't get it. Living together and not having fun yesterday are different issues. I can't know that. How can you think living together would be fun when I don't even enjoy being with your family? You won't know unless you try. Have you always disliked being with my mom? Haven't you noticed how your mother has been making snide remarks at me? Was there something? She even said things like the marriage was rushed or if you weren't pregnant, I'd have you divorced. Ha, that was just a joke. Don't take it seriously. Stunned by my husband's laughter, I realized he had never really understood that I was being mistreated by his mother. At the beginning of our marriage, he used to empathize with the tough relationship with his mother. But what about now? He seems utterly oblivious to the mistreatment. So, he views the relationship between me and his mother as just a mother making intense black jokes and a wife who hasn't gotten used to them yet. No way, that's not possible. Men can be so oblivious to the dynamics between the women around them. Not all men, maybe. But at least my husband seems unable to read between the lines or understand the real intentions of women. The word divorce briefly crossed my mind, but my swollen belly scolded me. It would be unfair to this child to be without a father, I should endure. With that thought, I continued to live while suppressing my feelings. Finally, the labor pains began, and my long-awaited daughter, Emma, was born. It's amazing how a baby's pure and innocent appearance can seem to blow away all the stress. I hope she grows up just as pure and beautiful. Giving birth to her, meeting her, I feel so fortunate. When I was discharged from the hospital, my husband came to pick me up. Perhaps because I had just given birth, my anger towards him seemed to vanish. Maybe, just maybe, we could manage to get along somehow. I thought, until... "Oh, welcome back," greeted my mother-in-law as I returned home. Behind her, my sister-in-law, munching on crackers, mumbled a garbled welcome back. She was too busy chewing to speak properly but seemed to ask, "What's for dinner?" As expected, my father-in-law was lounging back, watching TV as if nothing was unusual. It was tough while Wendy was away. Mom didn't want to do any housework. But why should I have to do housework at your house? I wanted to live with Wendy to be free from housework. Well, if Wendy isn't here, Mom has to do it. That's weird though. Why is it assumed that I have to do it? If Wendy had just been discharged from the hospital sooner, this would have been resolved. She couldn't be discharged early because she gave birth. That's true. The mother-in-law and husband laughed together. To me, there's nothing funny about their conversation. The room was much messier than the day I left, with piles of unidentifiable stuff on the sofa. My in-laws' house was somewhat untidy, but this was beyond comparison. My father-in-law likes cleanliness, but my mother-in-law does not. As you know, my husband is sloppy, and Erica is just like him. Probably, my mother-in-law, who used to clean up to match my father-in-law's standards, has stopped doing much housework since she came to our house. No, wait, what am I agreeing with? Right, before that, why are these people living in this house? I couldn't organize my thoughts, and all I could manage to say was a feeble "What do you mean?" My husband laughed it off. We've been talking about living together for a while. Wendy, you're so forgetful. No, this is not a laughing matter. Aren't you the one who's forgetful? I said I didn't want to live together, didn't I? Erica chimes in. Living here is pretty nice. I didn't want to leave home, but this place is surprisingly comfortable. You should go back to your own home. My mother-in-law scolds me. I won't let you do whatever you want in my house. Why can a freeloader claim this house as their own? Frustrated beyond words, the in-laws all demand. Don't just stand there, make lunch. Someone tell me this nightmare is a lie. Since then, I've been stuck taking care of the in-laws on top of adjusting to caring for my daughter right after being discharged. I make lunches because Erica goes to work, and if I refuse, I get yelled at, so I end up giving massages as my father-in-law demands, like a slave. My mother-in-law pushes all the household chores onto me and, of course, commands me to fulfill every whim of her domineering husband. I know this is wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to act on it because I was too exhausted from daily sleep deprivation. It seemed easier to endure life without thinking than to make considered decisions. Without any time for self-reflection, I became utterly exhausted. Eventually, my body screamed for a break, and I fell seriously ill with a high fever for several days. The in-laws didn't care. Instead, they berated me for being weak over a mere cold, but honestly, there were no signs of a cold, nor had there been a sudden drop in temperature. The cause was clear: stress first, fatigue second, and more stress. Luckily, while I was feverish, the in-laws managed themselves, and my husband took care of our daughter. It's absurd that they only help when I'm incapacitated. I'm not a maid or a slave in this house. The fever forced me to rest, giving me time to think. I decided to leave. On an impulse, I took my daughter and stealthily left the house in the middle of the night. When I returned to my parents, they were deeply concerned and scolded me. Why didn't you talk to us sooner? I thought I shouldn't rely too much on my parents since I was married. Parents always see their children as children. They said, and I realized I should have reached out sooner. Now as a parent myself, I understand the feelings of a parent more clearly. For about 2 weeks, there was no contact from my husband or his family. My parents were furious. To think he didn't even worry when his sick wife left home in the middle of the night. Well, it seems that was the extent of our relationship, but then, suddenly, my husband showed up at my parents' house with his mother and Erica. After all this time without a single message, what do you want now? My husband and in-laws exchanged awkward glances. You're the one who invited Grandma to that house, right? At my husband's question, I couldn't help but smirk. What are you talking about? Stop playing dumb. 2 days after you disappeared, suddenly Grandma shows up at our house saying, I've heard from Wendy. My mother-in-law burst out. Why did you lie saying we wanted to live with Grandma? Oh. Didn't you say we could have even invited Grandma to live here? That was because you were living with us. You tried to push the troublesome care of Grandma onto me, right? My mother-in-law fell silent, and in her place, my husband nudged to speak up, but he said nothing. Erica, half smiling, admitted. Well, Grandma can be a handful. My grandmother-in-law has long wanted to live with her son's family. At my wedding, she even suggested, now that Daniel is married and there's an extra room, maybe I should move in. My mother-in-law always laughed it off. Our house is too inconvenient for you with all the stairs. There's a reason why the in-laws are reluctant to live with the grandmother-in-law. It appears that the mother-in-law suffered severe mistreatment from her, and the hierarchy between them remains clear to this day. However, I had believed it was mistreatment because that's what the mother-in-law claimed. But, recently, hearing from the grandmother herself, it seems it was not exactly mistreatment. The grandmother is extremely clean and somewhat neurotic. It seems that cleanliness runs in her son's family. On the other hand, the mother-in-law is sloppy, and so are my husband and sister-in-law. They were even messier right after getting married than they are now, and it was the grandmother who desperately tried to correct this. Despite her intentions to simply observe silently, she often found herself unable to hold back her criticisms of their parenting and housekeeping, which the mother-in-law perceived as bullying. Living with such a sloppy mother-in-law was once unthinkable for the grandmother. However, now at the age of 90, having outlived many of her peers, she seems to have softened her stance, wanting to live a lively life with others, and has started to overlook the sloppiness. She comes into our house and immediately starts nagging about cleaning up. Wendy was so much more organized, and yet she scolds me so harshly. My mother-in-law attacked me, but knowing this was likely to happen, I couldn't help but smile. Seeing my smile, she snapped. What are you smiling at? Well, I thought it might turn out this way. It's exactly as I expected. Why not live together? No. She's too nagging. Because your way of living is so messy. I might not like Grandma's demanding ways, but I do think she's right about the cleaning. Just because she likes you, you think you're better. That's a misunderstanding. It's not that she likes me, well, she likes me more than she likes you. But if you were better at cleaning, you'd be treated the same. I was favored because she appreciated my skills in housekeeping. Indeed, because I like cleanliness. Grandma has been more insistent on living together since I married Daniel. She probably wanted to entrust the housekeeping to me. What does she think of people? I've told her to leave, but she won't leave. She's always nagging, ordering me around to buy this and that. I just can't take it anymore. Saying this, the mother-in-law covered her face and burst into tears. She's not usually one to cry over such things, but living with the grandmother-in-law seems to have taken a mental toll on her. Erica also lamented. I told her to leave, and she said I should be the one to go back to my own home. My husband, too, seemed exasperated. She wakes me up on my days off to clean. Grandma is too energetic, it's seriously tough. Everyone seems to be accumulating their own stresses. As for the instructions to your mother, let's set aside that she did the same to me, and focus on Grandma's points, which are mostly valid. My statement caused everyone to turn to me with puzzled expressions, as if to say, really? You thought Grandma was wrong, being selfish? Well. Their unequivocal response made me laugh. No, let me be clear, this house is not right. Grandma's perspective is correct. Especially. Erica, you hardly ever go back to your own home and don't contribute financially while squatting here, which is truly problematic. You may not want to do household chores, but you need to either move out or start living alone. It's a waste of money. But I guess, knowing your personality, handling such procedures must be too troublesome for you. Erica, hit right on the mark, turned red and shouted. That's none of your business. Well, it really isn't my business. Please. It was you who lied and called Grandma to our house, wasn't it? Take responsibility and send her away. With that, my mother-in-law clung to me. My house? You've settled in as if it's your own. That house belongs to me and my husband. Can't we forget the details? My husband's carefree interruption made me glare at him. It's not a small detail. We couldn't afford to support people who don't contribute financially. I'll pay for it, it's none of your concern. It is my concern because I'm the one who has to cook for everyone and do the laundry. You talk about contributing money, but managing that money is up to me. You don't even have a clue how much is needed for everyone, just casually putting in a little and acting all high and mighty. Seeing me burst out in frustration, Erica intervened. Well. Brother, this is not the time to be fighting with Wendy. Echoing Erica, my mother-in-law continued. That's right, we need Wendy to convince Grandma. My husband seemed somewhat unwilling but nodded. Yeah, I guess. Wendy, I'm sorry if we were rude. We didn't mean any harm. We should have talked more about what bothers us, we don't know enough about each other. Normally, being imposed upon to live in someone else's house during pregnancy and being exploited postpartum, one wouldn't need to discuss that it's unpleasant. Or is everyone in this house lacking that sense of normalcy? That's no way to talk, right? Can't we make up? I'm sorry for everything, I want to get along with you, Wendy. You just want to get rid of Grandma, don't you? I don't need such an apology. What should we do then? What do you want? I want nothing from you. What? Erica and Daniel, you both said it's none of my business, right? Are you mad about that? Should we apologize? It's not about that. Really, I no longer have any relation with you, so I don't need any apologies. I'm getting a divorce. My announcement made my husband the first to shout in surprise. What? Why? Why would you ask why? If you can ask that in this situation, that's precisely the problem. So, why did you think I wouldn't file for divorce? Well, we just had a baby. Having just had a baby, yet treating someone like a slave, and not even looking for them when they disappear, that's the kind of husband you are. Whether you're here or not makes no difference. Actually, it's probably better you're not. At least I can live freely. That's unacceptable. It's not good for the child's upbringing. Raising her in a sloppy and disorganized family? That's even worse for her education. A child should be raised in a complete family with both parents. Well, if both parents were decent, maybe, but what's the point if they aren't? Always saying such heartless things. Well, I am a heartless wife, so let's get divorced. My retort made my mother-in-law and Erica exclaim, "What are you saying?" as if they wanted to tell Daniel to appease me for now. Glared at by both, Daniel muttered, "Sorry." It was a tit-for-tat response, and apologized to me. That's why I said apologies are unnecessary. Please, let's get divorced. But that's not possible. He began to say, but his face stiffened. Huh? I looked behind to see my father and mother standing there. You said you'd leave it to me, right? Responding to my question, my father, veins throbbing on his forehead, said, I've been listening to the conversation from the next room, and it really made my blood boil. My mother added with a joking smile, I'm worried about my daughter. Sorry, but no matter what you say, we are divorcing her. You don't have a say in this. My husband and his family shuddered at my father's words. His angry shout, shaped by years of service as a police officer, instantly changed the atmosphere. Everyone straightened up in the tense air. After a moment of silence, they reluctantly conceded, understood. Hearing this, my father said, "All right, go home. We can't have you squatting here too," and shooed my husband and his family away, bringing the incident to a close. Afterwards, I divorced my husband without any trouble. Perhaps it wouldn't have gone so smoothly if I had been alone. Thanks to my father being present during the divorce discussions, issues like child support were cleanly resolved. As for my husband, after the house we lived in was converted into money as part of the property settlement, he began living with his family at his parents' home again. Despite objections, the grandmother insisted on continuing to live together, creating an unbreakable arrangement. My mother-in-law was overworked by the grandmother, and after Erica complained about the cramped space, she was forcefully kicked out by my mother-in-law saying, "Then you leave." My husband wanted to leave because of his mother's nagging, but financial constraints due to child support and other expenses made it difficult. The living arrangement with the grandmother likely won't last long due to her age, but for my husband and his family, it feels endlessly torturous. It appears that my father-in-law is as unhelpful as ever, leaving my husband and mother-in-law to struggle. Serves them right. Meanwhile, I have been living with my daughter after initially staying at my parents' home. While she initially met with her father, she has started to refuse, frequently canceling at the last minute citing ill health. According to her, it feels weird to hang out with a dad I've never lived with, he's like a stranger. Legally, I need to allow these visits, but if my daughter dislikes it, I won't force her. My husband might be lonely, but well, he chose this path. Serves you right, over here too. My daughter and I have a great relationship. We go shopping together on weekends and cook dinner together when our schedules match. She's very close to my parents too, visiting them a couple of times a month to share meals. She even cooks for my parents, saying, "I want to cook for Grandpa and Grandma." Hey, what about me? Though I'm a bit jealous, I'm also benefiting from teaching her cooking during our weekend classes, passing on recipes I learned from my mother. It's a joy to teach my child things beyond education. And those recipes, originally taught to me by my mother, are now being made for her by her granddaughter, which must be incredibly fulfilling for her. I hope to continue living happily with my daughter and parents. Now, off to make cookies with my daughter. They are a birthday present for Grandpa next month. As a mom, I'll bake the most delicious cookies to earn my daughter's admiration. Let's go.